Admit it, you've been waiting for this one, haven't you? But the Scarrans don't appear until the 33rd episode of the original series, so they are number 11 in our series of the species of Farscape. And if you like the Farscape Continues videos, please support them by clicking on the link below. The Scarrans are an interesting species. First, you have to get past the name. Scarrans. Scary. Get it? Ooh. Yeah, that's dorky. Beyond that, the Scarrans are a species with some interesting depth and nuance. What does the original series tell us about the Scarrans? Our first Scarran is Cargan, an ambassador and agent provocateur. In the Look at the Princess trilogy, we get our first glimpse at the Cold War between the Peacekeepers and the Scarrans that soon comes to be the center point of the series. As I mentioned in my video on Crichton, it is in the Look at the Princess trilogy that the grand story arc shifts to the looming threat of war and Crichton's priorities change. Cargan is our introduction to how nasty, brutish, and unscrupulous Scarrans can be. He also shows us our first glimpse of the Scarran mind probe that can be used for interrogation and as a weapon. The next Scarran we see is an operative who captures Crichton in Won't Get Fooled Again. In his first full appearance, Harvey explains a little about Scarrans to Crichton.
Because your real body is reflexively responding to heat. The heat a Scarran produces. Your weapon is of no consequence to a Scarran. Their skins are extremely tough. Pistol fire will not kill a Scarran before he kills you.
Despite the reptilian appearance, Scarrans are hot-blooded creatures. Similar to reptiles, Scarrans have thick hides difficult to penetrate. That's why Scarrans are difficult to kill, as we see with Erathon Plonik in Season of Death. Scarrans come with natural body armor, though cold is a weakness for them like heat is a weakness for Sebaceans, explaining Scorpius' dilemma. Scorpius is half Scarran, a half-breed created by a Scarran forced breeding program. We learn from Scorpius' memories in Incubator that the Scarrans are capable of great cruelty. There's no reason to believe that Tauza is an exception. Her treatment of Scorpius is consistent with the behaviors of the other Scarrans we meet. They have no respect for the lives of other species. The Cold War between Scarrans and Peacekeepers I will discuss in a future video. For now, let's look at what seems to be the three different types of Scarrans that we see in the original series. The first are the scouts and agents we meet in Seasons 2 and 3, recognizable by their protruding mouth, which is the perfect size to fit a soon-to-explode pulse pistol. The second type of Scarran we meet in Season 3's Fractures. His name is Najgil, but he doesn't look much like the previous Scarrans we saw, almost a different species. The inhabitants of Moya are obviously familiar with this type of Scarran, and even Crichton, who's not shy about sharing his surprise and incredulity, recognizes the different-looking Najgil as a Scarran. We learn from Najgil something about the mind probe.
If you are concerned because of my heat protection, first thing Peacekeepers do with Scarran prisoners, by removing the gland, it protects them and weakens me.
It's interesting that from a Scarran's point of view, the heat gland is protection. Najgil is a sympathetic character, at least to Dargo, who recognizes a fellow warrior as he had earlier recognized Aaron. Scarrans are people too, and some Scarrans are simple soldiers, pawns of the regime similar to the Peacekeepers. It is only late in the original series that we see parts of that Scarran regime. In Season 4's I Shrink, Therefore I Am, we meet the third type of Scarran.
So you know.
I know what you are.
Then you should bow down.
Entropy will claim the universe before I bow down to a Scarran.
Even one of the ruling order.
Particularly the ruling order.
The Scarran ruling order is more than a social distinction. They are anatomically different from other Scarrans. A few episodes later, we meet the ruler of the ruling order, the Scarran Emperor Stalik. Exquisitely badass, Stalik is half Caligula, half Incredible Hulk. I've mentioned in other videos how every government in Farscape is autocratic. Peacekeepers, Hynerians, Delvians, Nabari, and now Scarrans. Stalik clearly rules with an iron fist as the warlord of a military machine. This seems to be the norm in this part of the galaxy, but the Scarrans are distinct in having subspecies. We have the ruling order. That includes Stalik, Akna, Jenik, and Tausa. We have the long-necked Scarrans, who seem to be the Imperial Guards. Then we have the Tyrannosaurus Rex-like Scarrans. They are the first type we meet, but they aren't seen on Katratzi, and they aren't seen in the Peacekeeper Wars. We see some long-necked Scarrans in the Peacekeeper Wars, but Stalik's Imperial Guard is now composed mostly of members of the ruling order. I suspect that there isn't actually 3 different subspecies of Scarrans, but that the creators of Farscape decided at some point in Season 3 to change the look of the Scarrans. That would explain why the characters in Fractures simply accepted without comment Najgul's different appearance, and we never see the Tyrannosaurus-like Scarrans again. In Season 4, the show decided to add the ruling order subspecies, so toward the end of Season 4 and in the Peacekeeper Wars, the show has 2 costume types, the long-necked and the ruling order types of Scarrans, the Kargan Tyrannosaurus type now forgotten. If Farscape ever returns and continues, hopefully the Scarrans won't look completely different like a certain other franchise does to its warlord species. We can't talk about Scarrans without talking about the flowers.
Crystherium Utilium. We need to destroy the Crystherium.
Flowers.
The #1 secret in the whole Scarran Empire.
Crystherium growth requires very specific and rare conditions. The Scarrans can only propel their power forward from these very few locations.
And destroying a bunch of flowers is supposed to set them back.
For hundreds of cycles.
Scarrans! Simplistic, brutish creatures! Should have died out generations ago.
What happens if they eat the flower?
Big brains, evolutionarily competitive.
And if they don't eat them?
Your dog could beat him at checkers!
The flowers sparked an evolutionary change in the Scarrans at some point in the distant past, but they still depend on them to maintain their intelligence. This plot element isn't mentioned in the Peacekeeper Wars, but does set up the lack of flowers as the Scarrans' Achilles' heel in any future Farscape stories. Oh yeah, and Chiana helps us learn another thing about Scarrans.
Do Scarrans have Mivox?
Yes, but they're not external.
Yes, Scarrans have a sense of humor. Even Scarrans. Well, will we see Scarrans again? They may not be, and probably won't be the main villains in any future revival, but they'd be a welcome inclusion.